recording. Hello. Hi, April and Eric. How are you?
Hi,
Hello
doing
there. How you
great.
doing, Claire?
Good. So let me see. Okay, let's check in to make sure some of these folks can see us. Okay, you can only see a live stream is starting soon. Message. Can you see us now?
Yeah, I think that was a couple of seconds ago. Hopefully they can see us now.
Okay, hopefully we're on. So I'm super excited to talk to you guys today. You guys have an interesting, not only an interesting story, but an interesting work dynamic, which I think is going to be really fascinating to kind of dig into. I think that when as we've been going through this Work by Design Summit, one of the things that I've seen again and again from folks in emails or just posts on social is this kind of question of, how do we balance all this as parents, as moms, as dads, and as parents? Because I think productivity in general has kind of been siloed in this kind of space where, you can only be really productive if you don't have, 4 kids underfoot or whatever it may be. And so I think this is going to be very interesting conversation because you guys do have 4 kids underfoot and have a lot to say about it.
Yes, I know. I'm super excited. Please dig in as much as you want because we're happy to share.
Awesome. So I'm just going to read kind of your, bio just so that folks get a very, a very clear, dry sense of who you are, and then we'll kind of dig into really what the stories are behind the words. So April and Eric Perry are the organizational experts behind LearnDoBecome.com, an online community featured in both Fortune and Entrepreneur magazines that teaches principles of productivity, life management, and building strong families to more than 25,000 students around the globe. April and Eric also help run PowerOfMoms.com, an online community of more than 100,000 deliberate moms featuring a top-ranked podcast, a daily blog, and 2 best-selling books. They live in Southern California with their 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, and their puppy, Sunny. Working together from home for nearly 3 years has been an adventure for both of them, but they're incredibly grateful for the chance to share what they've learned from the ride. So, welcome. So, today's kind of topic is this idea of 3 ways architecting your life can increase productivity while strengthening your family. So, I think it would be great to just kind of start by telling us about your family.
Yeah, no. So we have Aaliyah and Grace are 16 and 14-year-old girls, and then Ethan and Spencer are 13 and 8. So we have a lot of fun for a few years. We had 4 kids under the age of 8. That was super fun. We're actually at a great stage right now where they are in school and they're capable and they help out a lot at home, and it's a lot of fun. So that's kind of the family. Eric and I have been married for 18 years this December, and it's been great overall. I think that we're going to talk today about how we're learning a lot, and we want to make absolutely clear that we're still in the learning process, but we're really excited to share just some ways that life architecture, and we'll talk about what that is a little bit, how that actually helps us and enables us to be able to work from home, provide for our family, things like that.
And I think with any individual or couple with their families, it's an evolutionary process, right? It doesn't just all come together overnight. I mean, we've been working with our children, teaching them some of the different principles we hope that they'll incorporate in their lives. And over time, over the years, they've actually started to adopt a lot of the things that we've been learning ourselves and working together toward as a family. And that's what one of the major messages is, as individuals, as couples, you can architect the life that you want. It's going to take a little time. It's not going to happen overnight. But as you identify the principles, the values that are important to you, taking that kind of conscientiously and deliberately moving forward, you can architect, the family, the life that you want. And, there's some things we'll share here in this presentation that'll talk about how we are be more productive and more effective in the midst of all that. And it's not productivity for productivity's sake. It's to be able to become more productive, to be able to have space and margin and time in our lives to focus in on the things that matter most.
I think that's so important, not productivity for productivity's sake. Sometimes folks ask me, what's the point of productivity anyway? And the point is not productivity. The point is to live the life you want and to be, happy and fulfilled as an individual and as a family. So,
well, actually, I love the name of your summit, the Work by Design, and you can even incorporate life by design, right? It's not that we just allow ourselves to be honed, like kind of pigeonholed into what work should be, but we should step back and realize what kind of work, what kind of life we want, and we design that. That's really very synonymous with life architecture. And so I just love the name that you've chosen for the summit.
Yeah, and maybe just one thing I'll add there is, Eric and I, at first, he went back to business school. I was home with our children. I was kind of starting some things from home. But then he was working a corporate job, and so probably 40 to 50 hours a week typically. And he was gone a lot, and I was home with the kids, which it worked out fine. But we had this goal that is actually mainly Eric's goal, because I was a little timid about it, but he quickly helped me to see how it was super exciting for me as well. So we set this goal together to be able to work from home, to be able to support our family, work side by side, and be able to do work that was really exciting to us. Like, I love writing and I love podcasting, and it was just a hobby, but Eric just said, hey, what if we made that our thing? What if we could actually help other families and become stronger ourselves and learn and have that be what we do for a living? And I didn't know that was possible. That seemed kind of far-fetched, or seemed like it would be so hard to do, but that's what over the past several years we've been able to do, so we can support our family, work together, be at home, and it's turned into be something way better than I thought it could be.
Well, I think that's really important what she brings up there, because our goal isn't to help everybody try to do exactly what we've done, but in the classes and the webinars that we teach currently and in the past, it's really bringing people on and helping them identify what is their higher purpose, what do they feel like they're uniquely qualified or positioned to do, and then to become productive, to become effective, to be able to focus their time on that. It may or may not be working from home, independently with a spouse. It might be something else, some higher purpose in your community, the world around you, but it really is trying to figure out how do you architect that, and then how do you put the simple steps in place to get there so you can use your life and spend your time doing those things that you care most about. And again, the subtopics of the summit I also love, this idea of purpose and productivity and profit, being able to figure out, if it is with an intent of supporting or sustaining your family, that's important. But I think you start with purpose, then you work through what you can do to become more effective, more productive, and then you work toward that profitability. And those three things really do blend together very well. So we're excited to talk a little bit about those things in the context of our message today.
Awesome. So let's dig in. And while we dig in, I really want to hear kind of your story about how you ended up working together. What were you guys doing years ago when you said, hey, we want this goal to be able to work together and work from home and provide for our family, that made it possible to kind of take this leap? And just make sure to tell us about the journey along the way.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, we didn't make a leap. We tried that once, making a leap, and we totally fell flat. It didn't work. This was, 8 years ago?
Right, about 2008. Like we thought we knew more than we did, this burgeoning internet economy. We jumped off and tried something. And, we learned a lot. We actually had a little bit of success here. We also had a number of failures from which we learned. Yeah. But it was interesting because, and I love, there's a concept that Dave Ramsey shares as far as financial independence and your own stability in life. He says, you want to go out and chase your dreams. You're standing on the dock looking out of that open ocean. Don't jump off that dock until either the ship has come in and is docked, or you have built a seaworthy ship that you can sail away on. So, not that we jumped off. We had plenty that we built up over time and savings and had kind of a backup plan in case things didn't go the right direction. But, just I guess one of the key messages is as you try new things, there are going to be some failures out there, some setbacks. Don't, be overwhelmed by them. Don't give up.
But we never recommend that any couple just go quit their jobs and have no savings in place and go jump off and try to start a new business online.
Have some savings in place and a plan B.
Yeah.
But, focus on that plan A and go after it, but make sure you've done your homework. But then, over those years, as I came back into the corporate workplace for a couple more years, I had a couple of business partners that asked me to come on and do some business development or some consulting for them because they weren't really the business types. They were more the technologists and some apps and some software design. And it was interesting because I really found I had an ability in that and I enjoyed it. And then we started seeing, a number of opportunities to start teaching and training on the things that we valued most, that mattered most to us. And so just little by little, we started kind of building these resources. That's kind of how April got started with a friend and kind of establishing Power of Moms, just creating some online resources for women who wanted to be more deliberate in their motherhood and to really focus on the value, the majesty, the nobility of motherhood. And that community has just grown internationally. It's just been really rewarding to watch. And they'd have, a few programs that people could buy and use there. But for the most part, there were a lot of free resources, podcasts, articles, and stuff. It was just, interesting to watch this community develop around it. And then over time, there were a lot of people wondering, well, where's the elements for dads, for couples, for families, and especially, for professional development in addition to personal development. Yeah. And so that's when about a year ago in July, we kind of established learntobecome.com. And it has become an amazing community. It's grown really, really fast, faster than we expected.
Yeah, we're still trying to get our feet under us a little bit.
But it's just interesting because, as you're saying, I'm sure with participants in the summit and the work that you're doing, there's just a desire for people to learn and to grow and to develop themselves where I think the internet and kind of digital programs has really facilitated that. And so it's been really fun to be part of that community, developing some of these resources, each of us in the areas where we may have a little bit of experience or expertise, just trying to help others learn what we know and also learning from them. I love summits like this because as you sit down and watch the 40 plus people who are speaking here, every one of those presentations has a handful of things you could learn and apply in your life. So that's kind of our story in a really quick nutshell, hopefully. It just says, and it's been interesting because about 3 years ago, I was able to kind of say, okay, we've built up enough of a base and things are working well that I could step away from full-time corporate employment and we could take care of our family's needs. And we have a chance to share time together across the partner desk in a little office we built in our home. And it's been, for the most part, a lot of fun. Like we were saying kind of before we got online live, that there are days, when it's a little bit of a struggle. I think it sounds like you work in an adjacent home office sometimes with your spouse. And, it's just the natural nature of marriage, right? And then not everything's going to be a perfect, smooth sailing voyage. And there'll be some stormy waters and a rough wave or two.
Well, like we have 12, 13-year-olds coming over this afternoon for a birthday party for our
Nice.
son. And then our daughter this morning, who's 16, said, I have 3 friends coming over to make banana bread for this class presentation tomorrow. And I'm like, you can't come over and make banana bread at the birthday party. I mean, and our dog, we're puppy training, so we're taking the dog out every 30 minutes. And, the things like it's the mom's birthday yesterday, and we want to make sure there's so many elements of our lives.
Right. So it's learning to manage life in the context of the goals, the dreams, the things you want to architect into it. And that's really, not that we're perfect at it yet, but we've found some principles that have really helped us over the years. And we've kind of built them into some resources and some programs that we've developed. And very excited to share a lot of those principles here today. So
awesome. So let's start walking through some of these principles because, what you just said, the idea of 12, 16-year-olds and then 3 other 13-year-olds making banana bread. And then
lots of teenagers.
Puppy training every 30 minutes. It's like impossible to understand how any work gets done. So yeah, you must have to make this work.
I know. Okay. So, there's 3 things that we're talking about today. And we're talking about the title of this presentation. And we want to make sure we weren't saying it's the 3 things. It's just 3 ways, 3 suggestions.
3 really helpful ways, but they're not the only.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and so just like anything. And so today we just thought, well, we'll just share maybe 3 specific ideas, and we would love to be able to answer any questions, and we would love to learn from the community who's here watching online too, just because we want to learn from other people. So first, we're just talking about the idea of a couple planning session. Then we're going to talk about a decision-making matrix that we've been working on. And then third, we're talking about eliminating piles because those are 3 things that have really helped us to be able to move forward consistently. So should we jump into the first one?
Sure.
Okay, so first is just having this weekly couple planning session. And Eric, actually, it was kind of his idea to put it on the calendar and decide a specific time every week that he and I will sit down and have a planning session to talk about the coming week. And, it's something like my parents never did something like that. And I never knew any couples who actually formally had a meeting. You just kind of assume the other person knows, you're talking as you're passing the kitchen or something like that. But having a formality to that where it's actually an appointment, and if something comes up, we don't just erase it, we move it. Because we found if we miss one of our planning sessions, we end up super grumpy with each other during the week because we'll say, did you miss that or did you get that? Well, we didn't have our planning session, and we feel kind of frustrated with each other. So what do you have to say about that?
I think that's true. I think it's just the ability to kind of keep kind of coordinated periodically throughout the course of a year and the course of your lives is really helpful. For us, for example, we have set that up in the morning on a Friday. And the reason I like it there is because it gives you a chance to do one last evaluation of what's coming up at you at the weekend ahead and plan the next 7 days, like through that following Sunday. So you're kind of looking ahead for 10 days, just kind of scanning through your calendar. We found using Google Calendars is really, really helpful.
So I used to use a paper calendar, and Eric just said, can you please go Google?
I could never see what she had planned.
I can't plan anything because I can't see your calendar.
So she finally went digital, and she's still kind of making sure that the dates and the times are right.
So bad at it.
Sometimes appointments will end up in really weird places, but for the most part, we're about 90% accurate.
Yeah.
But it's helpful to spend, we just spend 10 minutes there going through that calendar. When we first start our meeting, we'll kick it off at about 9 a.m. on a Friday. We just spend 10 minutes, just a little timer, and go through the next 10 days. Make sure all the big rocks, the things that we really want to have in our week are there. The events with our children, kind of some important individual or events there that we need to coordinate.
Or if we're teaching webinars or something like that.
It's a commitment there. We just want to make sure that's there, because that also allows us to identify where the open spaces are to, again, put other big rocks, right? So the things.
So I want to interrupt you to please explain big rocks, because I love the big rocks concept.
Okay, so we're also, sounds like you're a big fan. I mean, Dr.
People watching now, I don't know if they know what big rocks are, but they need to know.
Right. So one of the people who kind of popularized this idea was the Dr. Stephen Covey and his, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there are a couple of videos online. I think you can go look up some really good visual displays. But if you put the big rocks into a container and then you put smaller items, gravel and then sand and then water, the less important things, the things that aren't going to matter as much to you in your life, they go in, there's still going to be room for them. But if you neglect to put the big rocks in first, you put the sand, the gravel, the water in first, then try to fit those rocks in at the end, you're lucky if you can get half of them in. So it really is helpful to take a look at those next 7 to 10 days and say, okay, are the big rocks, the things that matter most to us spiritually, personally, from a family standpoint, and even professionally, are they in there? And then you can use the remaining space to fit in the other details that are important as well, but maybe not equally important.
Well, and one of the things that I found that I was doing wrong was I was assuming that Eric knew what all my big rocks were. Like, I assumed that he knew what my goals were and he knew what I needed. And then if he didn't give me what I needed, or, if he kept me up late, or I felt like, didn't you know I want to go to bed early? And he's like, I didn't know you want to go to bed early. I mean, I just assumed he was reading my mind, and that wasn't helpful.
To that point, I mean, I think that's true. Any spouse really isn't a mind reader, male or female.
Yeah.
It really is helpful. And this planning meeting, it can be as short or as long as you want. It could be 30 minutes, 15 minutes. It could be 60, or it could vary week to week depending on what you have available. But it's a powerful place to kind of connect up, and we'll talk about one other practice, maybe a weekly date night. But in these settings, you can talk about what you really need. And it's interesting because April will put on her calendar, April sleeps.
I have it what time I go to bed.
9:30 or 10. But she needs her sleep.
Or if I need to work in quiet, I block it out. April works in quiet and you don't talk to me. Like, that's on the calendar.
Because she's more of an introvert, I'm more of an extrovert. And so if she needs some quiet time just to focus and just kind of center, then that's on the calendar. I don't mess with it. But I can see it, right? I think that may be one of the places where as couples work together either professionally or personally, just having that clear communication, that understanding of what their needs are, what they're hoping for that day or that week, it really does fulfill expectations in a way that I think brings a lot more harmony.
Well, I was almost amazed when I put that on the calendar for the first time. April works in quiet, and Eric didn't talk to me for those 2 hours. He totally gave me quiet. Or I'll say, I'm going to go, rollerblading, and I put it on the calendar. He honors that. He wants me to be happy. He's not trying to, bother me or anything like that. So these
shared Google calendars, it's one approach. There are others, I'm sure, out there, but it really has worked for us to see what each other is planning and where we coordinate, overlap, who's picking up what children from what events. It just really kind of builds a system of kind of coherence there. And then just that other thing that we talked about, date nights. We try to reserve Friday nights as often as possible. We're pretty good at it. Just having a chance to go out and talk about some of these other things that we might not have as much time for in the planning meeting. So, some of the things that April outlined here is that we focus on the 10-minute calendar for the next 10 days, but then we also have kind of a wall calendar of the year and the bigger things that are coming up over the next 2 to 3 months. Just make sure we're kind of aware of them, any kind of preparations, plannings that we need to do.
Yeah, book launch or whatever is coming.
Absolutely. But then after you get past the calendar and the scheduling side of the meeting, that shouldn't really take more than 10 or 15 minutes. You can spend the remaining 15 minutes or more talking about, and you can vary these up, how our children are doing generally, right? Individually and generally. Maybe you talk about your major professional goals or initiatives that you're trying to pursue. You can maybe talk about a few books or programs or educational resources that you're kind of going through, or maybe you as a couple are reading the same book and you've gone over a couple chapters and just having a chance to compare notes. And then you can also share some feedback or kind of the habits that are working for you on how things are going for you as a couple or as a family. So those are just a variety of things that you can just kind of bring up as maybe topical or agenda type items inside of a planning meeting like this.
Well, and I love the idea that a planning meeting, I just want to be clear for anyone listening, I mean, it works for you guys because you work together, but you don't have to work with your spouse to have a really effective planning meetings, having them be super useful. So, yeah.
And it might actually be more useful if you don't work together. So. It's actually really helped us in some of our personal, familial, and professional goals. So just having a time to set aside a half an hour to an hour each week to focus and figure things out.
Well, we even talk about date nights. Is there another couple we want to go out with, or is there something, a connection that we want to make with a person that we really would like to meet? Things like that.
Learn from or to, yeah.
Right. You wouldn't necessarily talk about that on a day-to-day basis. And so, but one of the key factors, I'll just kind of share a few things that we haven't done in the past and then that have really helped our planning session. We want to make sure that we're not just looking at everyone else's goals for us and totally skipping our own goals, because everyone else's priorities seem to get the first pick on the week. Oh, there's a class party I need to go volunteer, or there's this event someone wanted us to attend, or there's something that's coming, and a lot of it is, I mean, just the school or the kids or, you know, doctor appointments, orthodontists, I mean, all the little things that we're doing, that can take up a lot of your week right there. And so we just need to make sure that we're stepping back and saying, so what are our goals? What are the things we really want out of this week that's going to move our family forwards, tighten our family, that's going to help our business, so that we're not just always putting our needs second. And I think that that's something that we need to focus on.
Right. So one question we have here is, you know, it's great to go about planning this and doing this for the next 10 days ahead, but obviously things are going to come up and things are going to change. So what do you do, and how do you kind of deal with the daily changes on a daily basis, both, you know, in your business because you guys work together, but then also, you know, from a family standpoint, sort of what's your policy or your procedure for dealing with all the many things that change regularly?
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the major things is we don't plan just once every 10 days. It's, you know, you set that week plan or that 10-day plan out, but then every night, you know, April and I have kind of a typical habit of going through, just looking at the next day for 2 to 5 minutes, just a quick overview. And if anything's changed, you know, the Google Calendar really is helpful because you can make changes on the fly and it'll show up on your spouse or family's calendar.
So we have a rule that you put a question mark after the event if it's still
tentative.
Yeah, tentative.
There's some
and then we take off the question mark as soon as you know,
it's
like,
more
the birthday party
stone.
is tomorrow from 3 to 7.
Right.
Period. You know.
But I think the question is really good because, yeah, every day is different. There's variability that comes out. And I think it's just the ability, and text messaging now and things like that, the Google Calendar allows for almost instantaneous, a quick check. Hey, I'm thinking about moving this from here to here. Are you okay with that?
Right.
That really allows things to happen quickly, and then it re-solidifies a plan that is still actionable throughout the week. So those are just a couple ideas.
Yeah. And then just a few more examples or a few more little things to think about, and then we'll jump onto our decision-making matrix. Some of the things that we've learned to do before we get together to plan is each one of us needs to go through our own individual calendars and make sure we've taken anything off that's not going to happen, or any of that, you know, other stuff. Because like we sat down for our session the other day and I had 3 different events that actually needed to be moved that were on the calendar, and Eric's like, seriously, why did you take these off before we sat down together? Why do I have to look at this? And so just thinking, if I could just take a minute and he can take a minute, clear off our calendar so it's as up to date as we can possibly make it.
Yeah.
That saves time and energy. We also want to make sure that we get a good night's sleep and eat food and make sure like we're in a good spot when we sit down for our planning session, because we don't want to end with someone crying or someone feeling
if you're tired, grumpy, hangry when you sit down for this, it's not going to go as well as it otherwise could.
Yeah. So, you know, and also it's just sometimes when you have a planning session, you feel like, oh, this could be a time to just express frustrations, you know, there's natural frustrations that happen in a family and in a business. So we just try to make sure that as we're talking about it, we're not just sitting here rehashing things that maybe we're upset about, but that we're trying to find solutions. Like, okay, so what are we doing about this moving forward? And just keeping a positive feel to that planning session. Because, you know, emotions can get high when there's a lot at stake. I mean, supporting 4 children, it's a big deal. I mean, if I was just working for myself and I had a little studio apartment, or maybe I could live in my mom and dad's house, that's not as much pressure as having to pay for your own home and care for your children. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. And so, especially when you have thousands of people in your community too, that you're supposed to be a leader, sometimes you can feel
that's one of the real
overwhelmed.
reasons behind the Learn to Become community, is because we are trying to figure out how to balance the professional things we want to achieve with still having a family that really is cohesive, that's well-functioning, that's close and love each other. And so it's that balance. It's that constant tension of figuring out how to keep all those in order. And that's why I think this couple planning session tremendously helpful. Like on the weeks we miss it, we miss it. Like
we feel it.
It did happen. So get back to it as quick as you can.
No, I think that's good. Is that good? Should we head on number 2?
That's awesome. Yeah, let's talk about number 2.
All right, so this is making a decision-making matrix, and the idea actually came from Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, and Eric and I have been talking a lot about decision-making because it's something that happens, every day. For example, we're talking about putting our calendar together for 10 days and things come up. Well, how do we decide which things do get to come up and which things we say no to, or how do we decide what we've committed to do? Because if you don't have really strong decision filters in place, you're just going to say yes to everything and be completely overwhelmed and then not end up getting the results that you wanted. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but I think too many of us, and me in the past, I've let this happen to me. And so when we're making decisions about our personal lives or families or interactions, even with extended family members, just deciding how to use that time, where to work, where to live, which projects, which purchases, which friendships. There's just a lot of choices to make. And so we've talked about and started actually doing this, putting together this decision-making matrix. So it's not just one set of questions, but essentially what it is, it's basic principles where you imagine just having a sheet printed out, and on the left side of the sheet, you have a series of questions. And on the right side, you just have the numbers 1 through 10. And you rate it, like a 10, of course I want to do it. A 1 is, of course I don't want to do it. And what Greg McKeown talks about in Essentialism is it's not a 9 or a 10, it's a no. So anything that's in the middle or anything that's not going to move you forward is just an absolute no. And so
it's a diplomatic and a kind no.
No, yeah. But that's important. I know you talk about that a lot. Just saying no to things. And so we just put together a few different ideas as far as if you're looking at your life and thinking, okay, when would I use a decision-making matrix? It could be when you're judging professional opportunities. Of course, like right now, as we're building Learn, Do, Become, there's, a lot of different choices we could make as far as where we would want to go with the platform. So just that alone, your community involvement, extracurricular activities for your children or for yourself, these social engagements and things I talked about. And so while every situation is going to be really unique, we can actually start creating kind of some categories that we can consider every time we're about to make that decision. And we found that as we put together different decision-making matrices in different areas like professional, social, family, that pretty soon most of the questions that come up, most of the situations that we're faced with, will fall into one of those general categories, and we don't have to keep recreating it.
Oh, interesting.
But that's been helpful. So we just have a few ideas on how to get started with that.
Yeah,
do you want to?
Okay.
So first is just putting our values in place from which we can, measure this criteria. Mm-hmm. Because as Eric and I were talking about these questions, I kind of initially just go to the questions. Okay, what are the questions we should ask? And Eric, the one who just says, well, let's step back and let's talk about, well, what are your values? What is it that matters to you?
Right. Well, I think, just to kind of step back for a second here, this idea might sound really complex. Build a bunch of matrices for all the different categories of places where you can make decisions. And I think, no, just stop, pick one place where you feel like you're being kind of asked a lot or have a lot of opportunities, because you might not have a lot of opportunities in some areas of your life, but others just feel like there's a lot of things demanding your time or trying to get you to choose something.
Like 50 birthday party invitations.
Well, social engagements, yeah. But I think you could step back and say, okay, from a family front or in a professional front. And I think it really is helpful to say, okay, let's just pick one kind of category of our lives, mm-hmm. and then identify what are the values, what are the things most important to me that govern really what outcome I want. What is the architecture I want? What's the design I want in my life here? And then you kind of start thinking about those core values, because those are going to filter the things you choose, the experiences you want to have. And then I think you step back and you can put together a few questions. And we can put some examples out of these types of things of our own out there on Learn to Become. We're kind of in the process of doing that. I just wanted to speak to a little bit here on the summit, because those questions should be very personal and very helpful to you to decide, what do I care about in this area? So, if you're going to be deciding something, you might say, how excited am I about the outcome of this project? If you're choosing between projects you could work on. Mm-hmm. How excited am I about the work involved in this project? Like, would I enjoy doing this work or would I not? And these are all 1 to 10 type categories. Mm-hmm. How strongly do I feel that maybe if you believe in a higher power, that God wants me to participate in this project? Maybe looking for some of that divine influence or guidance. If there's a financial component, how much will this project help us financially? Mm-hmm. Another question, how much will this help us in other
other ways.
Other kind of objectives.
Because there's a lot of things that you just do because you love it or you feel good.
But there might be this project versus this one, and this one actually will help you, it kind of dovetails into two other things. So there's kind of two birds with one stone there. And then how far is the potential reach of this project? Like, does it have a greater potential to help people, in this arena, or is it fairly limited in scope? And so I think as you kind of just start thinking about how do I want to evaluate my project opportunities, if it's, professional or, organizational, whatever it might be, that's just one example of a way that matrix might be established. And then as you consider, maybe 3 competing opportunities, you can use kind of that matrix to say, okay, which one scores the highest? And that kind of helps you to prioritize which one you might choose. Now, there might be other qualitative factors that don't quite factor into that, and you need to take those into consideration, obviously. But we've just found that when you're making choices among many options, having a simple values-based approach to just sorting that out really does help you.
So a question here is kind of, if you can go into more about what you mean about values, maybe give us some examples of some values in your life, and if values are things that you change on a regular basis, or values are things you guys have been married for 18 years, so you always have the same values?
That is a great question. Great question. So I actually am consulting with a couple of companies, or have over the years, and one of them actually is about helping people kind of establish their values. I know, again, back to the Covey model, Franklin Covey is all about, before you go plan off your year and your week, you kind of figure out what your values or your mission statement is. And the company I was consulting for was trying to teach attendees in the seminar what values are. And I cracked up because what they said was true, but it was so simplistic. It's like, values are things that you value. Right? And I'm just like, yes, they are. And so for each of us, it's going to be individual. Now you ask about, do they change every so often? I think there's some very core values that are pretty much lifelong. They're the things that really matter to us. And then I think there are ages and stages of our lives where some of the things that we value, like right now, it's being able to have the flexibility in our schedules as one kind of maybe quasi-changing value. Having flexibility in our schedules to be able to participate in our children's activities, extracurriculars, practices, events, things that they're doing, because they're in that 8 to 16 range right now. Now in 10 years, 20 years, that value might be a little different. It might be being fairly available for our grandchildren,
right,
but not necessarily having the same level.
Our children get home at 2 o'clock every day, and I actually stop my work at 2 so that I can be there. We have an after-school smoothie. Eric and I go down. He does the carpools. I make the smoothie. We hang out with the kids, and we spend the whole evening with our children. Sometimes I'll bring my computer down, and they'll do homework while I do some work online, but my goal is to get everything done by 2, and then maybe I'll finish up a little at night after they go to bed. But those hours right after school, I want to be with them, so that matters a lot. And as Eric and I have been looking at different opportunities, I actually was invited to come do some in-person trainings, some companies, like over on the East Coast or Midwest. Mm-hmm. So we were looking at that because, financially, that could be really lucrative. And this one company was saying, there's just tons of opportunity. We would love to have you train all these different divisions, and we'd love to have you here. But that was going to be travel for me, being gone for several weekends at a time. And because our children are at this age where they're young and we want to be with them, we just decided. Well,
an additional value for you there is, you are a little bit more of an introvert, and
it exhausts me to be in front of
people. Just wears her down. Yeah. Travel, new places, new things, and the time away. So there's some internal values as well that were governing it. She's like, we should do this, right? I should do this. And I said,
at first I'm like, yes, of course, we should do this.
And we're thinking, it's a great opportunity professionally. But then you start looking at some of these other questions on a matrix like this and says, look, is this really going to give you the outcome you want, or can we achieve those objectives in other ways? So
I did a webinar with them online, and we're opening up corporate offerings with,
and it starts getting you creative to figure out exploring other options that would work for that opportunity, that company that you're trying to work with, for example. But, it really is a process of just understanding what those values are. So to answer that,
flexibility, time with family,
Absolutely. So some values, I think, just my personal opinion, are going to be core and should be core and sustain you throughout your entire life. In fact, we'll talk about maybe more toward the end of the call or the presentation here. But, this whole idea of life architecture is something I'm passionate about. I think people can architect the lives that they want. And so we'll go into it more in detail. But, we wouldn't move into a home that wasn't architected and designed and detailed and structurally engineered. We wouldn't drive a car that had been engineered and safety tested. We wouldn't even buy a shirt that hadn't gone through some sort of a pattern, right? Or eat a meal that wasn't cooked to a recipe. But so many of us will actually live lives, 85, 90-year-long lives without thinking about their design and their architecture. So I'm passionate about this. There's a resource I'm kind of building right now that has kind of 12 different components. And really, I was just kind of putting in order right now. The first 2 pieces of it are establishing kind of a personal hall of fame, like in certain categories: spiritual, professional, financial, familial. Who are some of the people in your life you've most admired, right? And that right then, that gives you kind of a real personified context, because the next step is to articulate your values. Maybe you write a personal constitution or something like that. But being able to draw down from real people that you've seen and admired, you can maybe understand or start to frame what were their values that they, and you might be interested if you interviewed them, did they have some matrices, some decision-making matrices that they had in their lives? So I'll get more into that in the end if you want, kind of some stuff. I just get excited about this because we're meant to architect lives of excellence.
And Eric is one of those people who thinks outside the box, and I'm one of the people who follows rules. And so, for example, if
I follow most rules.
He follows most rules. But here's just another really simple example. Let's say a friend of mine is having a birthday and they're doing a big lunch with a whole bunch of girlfriends. And now I'm an introvert. I don't really love those lunches, and I'm probably not even going to talk to the birthday girl at all. I'll just kind of be there at this lunch. It's going to take some time away from my work day. I'm going to be kind of tired. Okay, so for me, I'm thinking, but I love my friend. I should go to this lunch because I want her to know I support her. And Eric is saying, is this the best way to accomplish this goal of letting her know you support her? Could you plan something just the two of you one-on-one? Is there something else you could do another day?
Like go on an early morning walk for 45 minutes and take her a little gift so you get some exercise, you're out in the fresh air.
And you don't get exhausted and you're getting one-on-one. And so Eric is really good at saying to me, April, don't just do everything you think you have to do. Can you just come up with a better way to do it that helps you meet the same goal while also honoring what your core values are? And so every time we have these talks, I'm like, man, you're right, of course. Why do I have this pressure on myself to do everything that I think is expected of me when often there's a much better way to accomplish it?
And it's challenging because we live in a world of lots of demands and invitations and expectations, but I think we really need to learn to value our time and the time that what we're able to do with that time for ourselves and for others. You know, we don't say yes just to accommodate, right? And we were in a presentation once with Christy Wright, one of the Dave Ramsey personalities, and one of the things she said that really resonated with both of us is that an honest no is far better than a dishonest yes. And it's not that you're lying to them, it's just like you're going along with it, you're accommodating.
Oh, it's not your full heart, yeah.
Absolutely. So we just want to be able to figure out how do we, identify what it is we value, what matters to us, and find the best way. Sometimes it's thinking about outside the box. It's figuring out how do we create an alternative that didn't seem to be there and pursue that one, and it's actually a much better outcome for us.
An honest no is better than a dishonest yes. I really like that. Huh.
Okay, should we move on to number 3 or any other questions on the decision-making matrix?
Yeah, well, there's one question, but I think we can do it at the end because Eric had mentioned bringing it up in the end. So let's go on to number 3 and then we'll come back to it.
Okay, so number 3 is learning how to process and eliminate the piles. Now, I know it might seem kind of like a minor detail, like we're going to talk about decluttering your house or organizing.
I was kind of teasing, like I hope this is a predominantly female audience because that may not resonate with men who are watching this call or not.
But men have piles.
But she's right. I'm looking at my office and her side of the office, and I have a couple more piles. I have a couple piles. She has none. So she really has worked from this framework of really eliminating the piles, paper and otherwise, from your office or your home environment.
Well, from your mind.
From your mind. We have stacks of things in our head. So she is actually very masterful at this, and kind of the system that she's built that we offer at Learn to Become, does this so well and just gives people the physical and the mental space they need to do what they want to do.
Well, so going back to that life architecture idea, we're saying you would never build a house without having a blueprint. Same thing where if you're going to build a home or an office building, you're going to clear the ground and you're going to make space to do it. You can't just go in on top of an existing structure or on top of a big pile of rubble.
Just throw a building down on top of it.
You would never do that. And so what happens though is we work with people, we do live webinars, and I have a program about productivity where people are honestly living in the middle of piles their whole lives. I mean, that's how I grew up. I grew up with piles, and we'd move them from the front room to the back room and from the back room to the front room. I mean, that was just what you did.
Or the trick with the piles, one of my mom's friends had this trick where she would put the pretty blanket over the pile.
Yes. We totally did that.
Decorating with piles.
Decorate the pile. I mean, I even took this class and they said, and if people come over, you put all the dirty dishes in the sink and cover it with a big cutting board so no one can see. I mean, so funny, but we come up with these ways to hide our piles, and if we can just get rid of them, it completely gives you freedom to be able to think and create. So I'm a huge Getting Things Done fan by David Allen. And so I've been teaching his methodology, kind of tweaking it, working really well for families for several years. But just kind of, I'll talk about just a few basic principles of that, because it's not just about getting rid of clutter. It's about giving just clarity to your mind. Because when I have piles of stuff and I have tons of things in my head, I'm grumpy with him. I'm grumpy with my kids. I don't feel like I can connect, and I feel like I'm all over the place, and I don't like feeling like this. And I know Eric experienced the same thing. If you have too many things coming in at you, you're not going to have this wonderful, happy, calm life and calm family and be singing together around the piano at the end of the day. I mean, that's not going to happen. But if you can figure out how to get a system in place, how to clear your counters, clear your desk, and really be deliberate about what you're working on, I mean, it's night and day. It's totally changed my life. And so I'm just 3 things that we'll just talk about as far as piles. First is just action versus non-action. So I used to just have a pile on the kitchen counter, and some of them were flyers for the kids' events that I might want to go to, and some of them were forms I had to fill out for something or a bill that had to be paid that day. And so I would look at a pile and I couldn't tell what I needed to do and what I didn't need to do. It was just all over the place. So just, even if you just separate your pile into action versus not required, no action required, that's a huge thing. So that's number 1. And number 2 is, if there is an action, what's the next action? That was the biggest aha for me that I honestly had ever had in the productivity space. I mean, I used to work with Franklin Covey. I love organization. I had a planner since I was 13, and that was my thing. But I didn't learn about next actions until I read David Allen's book, Getting Things Done. And when he helped me boil it down to the very next thing, that was helpful. For example, Eric and I were building a website at the time. And on my mind, I just kept thinking, website. So you're hanging out with your kids, or you're trying to go grocery shopping, and this website project is just over you like a dark cloud. And then when I said, well, what's the next action? What's like that next specific visible activity? Well, I actually just need to make a phone call to our web designer to set up a meeting. Like, that I can do. Like, that doesn't stress me out. That's a simple email.
Because when you boil a project down to its actual next component step, that's most simple, the most basic, it almost sounds kindergarten-ish. But when you can figure out what it is you need to do on a project and boil it down to that one thing, you won't procrastinate it, right? It gets done because you're not afraid of it. So many people on their to-do list, their task list, will put projects like landscape the backyard. And it's like, that will sit on that list for the next 6 months and just demoralize you and demotivate you. But if you're like, hey, call my friend or text her and ask her who did her backyard, and get the name of somebody I could reach out to get an estimate, right? That one call to a friend, that's the next action. And it'll start you on your process there. And so I'm not sure that floats back.
So no, whether it's landscape backyard or starting a website, or like our kids are going to be out for school for the summer and we have like 6 more days of school. Okay, we need to put together a summer schedule. What's our next action? How are we going to do it? Do we want to do what we did last summer? Do you want to make something else up? I mean, how do we want to make this happen? But having really specific next actions, even things like preparing for the summit. Okay, what's the next action to know what we're going to talk about here? I mean, boiling that down is super important. So I feel like as soon as you learn that one skill, it totally changes things. And then just the third thing is just knowing, when are you going to review these tasks, and then when will you do them? That has to be in your mind, because if you think, oh yeah, I'll do this, and then you throw it into an Evernote and you have no plan of when you're going to look at it again or when you're actually going to accomplish it, it will be lost in that black hole forever. But if you say, okay, I'm going to review this Friday morning during our planning session, and then we'll work on it when we have some time scheduled next Monday, that's a whole different story. And then you can actually see yourself moving forward on things. And, I think for us, the biggest issue has been learning how to work together on projects. Am I handing you something? You're handing me something. Who owns this project?
And we're still figuring that out. It's working relatively well, but we want to streamline it.
Yeah. So, okay. So those are our 3 ideas.
I love it.
And that third idea, there's actually, I think, that we wouldn't give too many specific details on how to do it.
Yes.
But we'll have more information for anybody here for free to learn how to do that, right?
Yes. Okay. So actually, and we'll be talking about this probably more when we close, but learndobecome.com/summit. We have a totally free resource to show people how you set up your system and a flow chart so you can get your piles all the way to 0. So we can talk more about that later. But
she's the queen of getting no piles around your office or home. And she's also a huge fan of getting your emails to 0. And she has like this way of doing it in 2 hours or less. Where your inbox, it'll actually have cute little pictures when you're at inbox 0. And she loves to see that because she just no details are hanging over your head. When your child comes up and asks you if you can go out and play in the backyard or go jump on the trampoline, you're like, yeah, I can, because all the stuff that's swirling around your head isn't there because the piles, the inboxes are clear. So.
Yeah, I've never been, inbox 0 was sort of something that always eluded me, and then it's finally just in the last year that I realized how important it really was, because I guess I thought I was productive and thought, it didn't bother me that I use my inbox as a to-do list, essentially, right?
Mm.
And then I totally made the shift, and it's been just, I mean, it's just a radical shift.
Liberating, yeah.
That's why I love this summit, because I feel like we're all talking the same language.
Yeah, no, totally. So let me ask you guys some questions here that we have. So one of the questions is kind of something you ended on. You talked about, you know, how you manage when you give, when you give Eric a project, or when Eric gives you a project, and sort of who's owning it. So talk more about the dynamic of actually working together as a couple. Just, you know, people are saying that's very hard to do, obviously. So how do you do that well? And is that something you learned, or do you think it's something that just certain couples are good at, and other couples are sort of not suited to?
Well, those are lots of good questions.
Yes. Okay. So do you think we just came like this? That we just knew how to work together? No. Oh my gosh. If you knew how many hours we've spent having like heart-to-heart conversations about how are we going to move this forward. Yeah. I mean, I think the reason why a lot of couples don't work together is because it's super hard. Like it's not easy. And
well, we've talked to a handful of couples over the years who have successfully been able to do kind of these types of things. They said, this is not something I would recommend to everybody, and not something I would recommend to the faint of heart, right?
Yeah.
It's a process. I think the key component there is that both of the spouses have a desire and a commitment, you know, an interest or desire to be able to figure it out, to work together, realizing it's going to be kind of a long...
Show my poster.
All right, April's going to get a poster to show you.
Hang on, I have to
to disconnect here for a second. But I think it's that idea that if it's something that both of you want to do, then you need to be committed to it. The reason I say that is because it doesn't have to do anything with professional endeavors or professional goals. I think every couple, if they become a couple, they became a couple for a reason, right? To either be together or to establish a family or whatever their objective was in making or forming that couple. Mm-hmm. So I happen to think that the underlying desire is there. Now, to the question about how do you do it, I think that's a very unique proposition as well. Given your personalities, if you have two extroverts, two introverts, I mean, whatever, you can use all the profiling you want, but just figure out what really works well in communicating and collaborating with the other. I was recently in a conference with a leadership conference, and the speaker said, make sure that you show kindness to your spouse in the language that they perceive as kindness, right? And so you can go back to the love language concept, but am I paraphrasing that right?
In the way they perceive kindness.
Yeah, in the way they perceive kindness. So you communicate, you do things for them, you plan and you organize in the way that makes sense to them. And oftentimes I'll ask, if it's going to be something that she's going to lead out more on, I'll say, okay, how would you like to do it? And then she proposes kind of the framework of the approach. And it's my job to get on board with that, because if she's going to be the one who maybe owns that responsibility, that project area, and vice versa, right? If it's something I'm going to own, I might put it into a different framework. I might use Excel where she might use her planner or Kanban flow. So it's just trying to figure out that we understand we kind of have some tools, some approaches that generally work between us, but then the one who owns something will take the dominant decision making. Okay, I'd like it to be this way and this way, since I'll be the one that has my hands in it the most. So that's just kind of one quick side idea.
So, I mean, as far as what tools you use, yes, if it's going to be Evernote or it's going to be Kanban or whatever it's going to be, like we've tried a lot of different things. We have a spreadsheet, we're putting together our action calendar, so we have all the categories we're working in, what we're getting done. But just a fun little example, we're always trying new things, and I think it's just like making chore charts for your kids. You're usually not going to have one chore chart that's going to work forever.
For 18 years.
But you'll usually find some system that works at different stages. And so, for example, I don't know if you can kind of see what we did. I'll just show this as a big level. Cool. This is our little poster board we made the other day. And the orange Post-its are our major projects we're working on. And then the blue little Post-its here, these are just kind of like next actions in order of tasks that need to happen in order for these projects to happen. So, so while not everyone's going to make a poster board, we were sitting down, we were talking about a lot of things, we had ideas everywhere. And Eric's like, I need them written down so I can see the whole thing so we can decide on strategy.
Well, see, I'm more of a kind of the bigger picture strategic, and she's more of the day-to-day functional tactical.
Right.
And so it's just that, and again, that's another one of those differentiators between a couple, right? And it's just figuring out, I needed to see, okay, what are the major initiatives? What are all the ones we really are interested in trying to pursue this year? And okay, how many of those can we actually focus on at one point in time? Mm-hmm. And then saying, okay, it's going to be the first three then, but then under that, the blues, the purples kind of represent some of the tactical things. And we can work sequentially. Now these are prioritized, right? We can kind of see how the waters.
And each of us owns certain projects.
Certain parts of it. So it's just being able to break it down. This is more, I guess, advice for couples who are working together in some professional capacity. But
it was pretty cute to watch him with his Post-it notes, and we're making a poster board together.
Oh, we have Post-it notes. I mean, there's just, we use whiteboards. We'll use kind of those fold-out project things that fifth graders do science projects on at school. And it's where you just kind of envision and dream out what you want to see happen. But being able to get kind of a general framework kind of keeps both of you on the same page and say, okay, are these our priorities, right? Are these the things that we're really committed to in this order? And these are the working steps that we think are best going to help us accomplish, like April was saying, those next actions to achieve the projects we've set.
And then during our planning session, that's where we're actually calendaring. Like, okay, I need 1 hour to be able to record this one class with you. Right. So let's put it in the calendar. And then we just start working on those. And, and I think what's helpful is what you're generally working towards together. You're on the same page with your projects list. I mean, having a current projects list is a big deal. The orange things, the orange Post-its, those are our current projects, right? Yeah. And we have our next actions. Then we're having our weekly review, our planning meeting. When are we doing them? And then every day we're working together. Okay, you got this, I'll work on this, and things always come up. Like my computer hard drive, I had to totally redo it last night and restart over factory settings because it's having all these issues. So now I'm spending the morning reinstalling software so I can do work later. I mean, it's things like that will come up. And the birthday party and the puppy. I mean,
it all works.
It all works generally, but I feel like I can breathe better when I have a system and I know what success is for us. Like, what's our shared definition of success? And if I know that what are we doing
to achieve that, and who's really going to handle or manage those elements to achieve that success? So,
yeah.
To the larger question, should all couples, work together? Yes, in some way, shape, or form, right? As a couple, why you came up together as a couple, can you do it? Yes. I'm 100% in belief of it. And that's, why we started Learn to Become. It's been so much fun to watch these couples come together and maybe learn a few different approaches or skills they never had before, put those into play. And my favorite part of running that community is getting the Facebook posts or the emails that come back that are sharing their success stories, how they're moving their lives or their relationships or some of their personal and professional goals forward. Like, that's the payoff. And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing in your community as well. It's just fun to watch people adopt principles they'd never thought of or considered and apply it and get the results. That's why we named the site Learn, Do, Become, because we're learning some things, understanding them better to put it into consistent practice, doing it frequently enough that it becomes a habit, and we literally become what we're meant to become. So,
gosh, I love it so much. So I don't want to, I know we're coming up on the hour here. So can you guys talk about what you're really focused on right now and where people can find you, and just sort of tell us some, places we can get some cool resources to learn more about your work?
That'd be great.
Yes. So learndobecome.com. Actually, Eric put together a little URL.
I'm high tech here.
/summit. Go to our URL. Are you going to make it flash? I know. He's going to have it flashing up and down. He's so funny. He has great handwriting too. So, okay. This is where you can come. Find out what we're working on.
We'll do the Grover near. Oh.
That's so essentially what we're trying to do, we actually have a program called Steps to Everyday Productivity. That's our main project right now because we found that it helps us really tie all these things together. We'll include the decision-making matrix and how to plan as a couple and how to really get those piles eliminated. So this just has a free resource on how you set up a system and the flow chart to help you go through that. Like, this is just really basic information on what you would need to have as your resources in your home office, how you're actually going to deal with the stuff, because I think that's the main problem is people don't know what to do with all the stuff. So we help you go through that so you can figure out what your projects are, what your next actions are, and just kind of get a good framework from which to work. And then we'll be working on more life architecture as far as the personal constitution and kind of the bigger things that deal with our values and where we're going in life. That's coming soon. But yeah, come to this URL to
this URL has some great resources for all the people who have taken part in Claire's summit here, which we think is amazing. We love the concepts and the ideas of the summit. So we'd love to connect to you here. April also, like she said, we teach this webinar, this class once a week or twice a week for free. It's an hour long, and it's at the same domain /step, STEP. And there's kind of 4 major principles that we go over that talk about really putting all these things into play. These three things we just taught on today, but really how to get a very basic system established. Anyone with any resources, no matter the space, the time they have available, can build a simple system to kind of keep these things going consistently. And then, like April said, just one last thing, like I am passionate about life architecture. I love this idea of designing your life. And so we're putting together a resource that we'd love to, once you connect with us on the site, we'll kind of stay in touch with you. I think we still have kind of a little survey you can say if you're most interested in life architecture or productivity or family or whatever it might be. There's 5 areas that we kind of focus on. But in life architecture, helping you establish your personal hall of fame, determining and articulating your values, maybe a personal constitution, We'll even get into things like, this sounds kind of crazy, but this is kind of how I think. A 50-year plan where you're looking at kind of just for now, 5-year major milestones, just what you'd like to be
have a 50
or to become. Well, yeah, I figure I'm going to probably die at about 85 or 90. So just looking out, because when you start putting that type of a framework together, you're thinking about what type of life experience or milestones would I like to achieve at these 5-year things. Then you can plan back, and we'll actually talk about how you take your 5-year goals and then kind of transition that into maybe like 3-month kind of project plans. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to do project plans and choice lists. So life architecture really becomes a natural feed into personal productivity, these other kind of resources we talked about. So getting down to that project level management, and just even some things in the architecture program we're adding about just like Sunday sessions and like how you establish your weekly schedule, you know, how you look at and consider time and how it's used and the criteria like we talked about today. So just a variety of ways to help people figure out how they can step back, maybe just taking 30 minutes a week to really look at the bigger picture of their lives and frame and create the architecture that helps them kind of live under the surface that helps them achieve the results they want 25, 50 years from now.
And I think that the whole goal here, I know that the whole goal of what we're working toward is just to help strengthen families. We know it's not easy to build a strong family. A strong family doesn't just happen. But if we want to have great marriages, we want kids that we love, who love us, we want our home to be happy, we want things running well, and we want to be able to have a business that flourishes, that supports the family so that we're not stressed about finances. And we just want that tight family. I mean, that's something that we need to learn and create. And we just love the community it learned to become. So we're learning so much in the process. And we just feel like we're kind of fellow travelers, right? We're going through it. We've learned enough to be able to sustain our family and keep all this going. And we have a good thing going, but we have still a lot to learn, and we still have a lot of bumps in the road. And we're really thrilled to be able to be part of this community and be able to learn from everyone as well.
This has been so great. Thank you so much for being here. I learned so much. I know that, the 70 or so folks who were here learned a ton as well. So this was awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Glenn, for letting us be part of your summit.
Have a great day out in Southern California.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
You too.